olive leaf extract. Is that very similar?
Yeah, so that's not one that I use in my dispensary, but certainly a lot of people talk about olive leaf extract. I have a feeling that that's more used for heart health, but I couldn't be 100% sure.
Okay.
There's so many hundreds of thousands of herbs that are used, and I know that obviously olive leaf is very important in sort of Mediterranean countries as part of their materia medica. As you can probably hear from my accent, I'm in Scotland, and it's just not a herb that we use a lot here.
Okay.
But yeah, certainly worth looking up, and there's plenty of information out there about the different herbs.
And then rescue remedy, that's very
Mhm.
popular. Is that made from herbs as well?
It is. So it's a slightly different kind of preparation. Rescue remedy is a flower remedy. So what that means is that the flowers are, so rescue remedy is a mix of lots of the different bag flower remedies together in one. And it's a sort of for stress relief and soothing. And what they do with flower remedies is it's a very small dilution. So the flowers put into usually brandy is what they use to create a tincture, and then they dilute that down further. But I really like rescue remedy. I think it's really good. If it's not quite enough, the next strongest thing to go to in terms of a herbal medicine for stress would be a tincture or a tea. So, for example, if you find that, so rescue remedy is great because it's a tiny little bottle and you can carry it very easily with you. If you feel it's not quite enough, what I would suggest is regularly drinking chamomile or a blend that has chamomile as its base. So there's lots of blends out there now with names like Relax or Restore, or all the big tea companies are using these names. So they can't make medicinal claims, but what they do is they use a name that sounds like what it's going to deliver for you. So look out for those ones.
My other question is, what I'm noticing in the supermarkets is, and I don't know if it's Twinings, but they are making a concoction suitable for cold water. And so you just put it in your water bottle. Is that as beneficial as heat? So boiling water, and maybe the heat might release certain properties.
Yeah. So the cold water infusions are definitely don't hold the same. The herbs don't infuse in cold water in the way that they do in hot. They're just not the same. So what those cold water infusions, I think Twinings were the first, certainly in the UK, to bring out the cold water tea bag, if you like. And I was a bit involved in the development of that. So what that is there for is to give a healthy alternative to sweetened drinks, and an encouragement to take more water on board during the day, because of course nothing functions properly unless we've got our water levels up. And when you're busy working, especially if you're inside in an air conditioned space like we talked about a little while ago, that's a problem because your tissues start to dry out and then nothing functions properly. So those are there as a healthy alternative to sweetened drinks, and as a way to encourage people to make their water a bit more interesting. But they're not going to deliver the same medicine as a hot infusion would.
Okay. Sorry, I interrupted the flow there with regards to your tips of what you would not leave behind in your travel bag.
So I think, so we thought about digestion. So chamomile just covers so many bases. We thought about immunity. I would also, particularly, we were talking about people when they're working, they may not have as much access to outside daylight, if they're, depending on what jobs they're doing. Vitamin D supplement I would always take with me. And if I felt I was coming down with something, that moment where you just do that swallow and you think, oh, rubbish, I've got, there's an itch, there's a scratch there. I would always take vitamin D at that point. I would also take a sleep tea with me, so something a little bit stronger than the chamomile if I wasn't sleeping very well. So herbs to look out for then. So there's lots of sleep teas on the market. Sleep teas are a massive section of the herbal tea market. And I think it's because it's something that, you know, we can really, if we have an issue with sleep and we try a product, it's really easy to know whether it's working or not for us, right? So you're either sleeping better after a while of taking it or you're not. And so herbs that I would look out for in a sleep mix would be like passiflora, which is really good for when people have got out of a good sleep routine. So it's not going to be enough for real true insomnia, but it's really good when you're asleep, you realize your routine's really out. And especially if you have a busy head. So I always say to, you know, to my patients, so sort of, you know, is, you know, when you wake up in the night, I would say to you, you know, is Radio Karine already playing in your head? You know, is it already busy in there? If it is, that's a sign that you really need to take some calming herbs before bed. So that's another one. In terms of digestion, again, if you tend to get any kind of nausea, it's good to know that peppermint and ginger are the ones for that. So peppermint teas and ginger teas are really good for that.
Yeah.
And also for bloating, if you're finding, you know, you're getting a bit bloated, then fennel is the one for that. So you can kind of figure out what things you struggle with when you travel and when you're going to be away, and then kind of make yourself a little pack according to that. So I would always suggest the immunity stuff. And, you know, and in terms of, like we said, going from one, if you're traveling suddenly in the middle of one season and ending up in another one, just be aware that that is going to be an extra stress for your body, particularly with regard to immunity.
Okay. So what about in terms of staying alert? Because there's a lot of, especially chefs, they have very, very big days. And so they might be on a number of coffees a day plus Red Bull. What would be a healthy alternative?
That sounds like my old life in the film.
Oh, yeah.
So I used to have like my top drawer, as I started learning about herbs, I had one of those desks with the 3 drawers, you know, the little thin one on the top and the big deep one on the bottom. So my top drawer was Barocca, had just come onto the market. I don't know if you guys have that, right? So we thought this was like revolutionary, B vitamins for stress. So I had Barocca on the top and some herb teas because I was just starting to learn about them. But if you looked in my bottom drawer, I used to open it and you would hear the Red Bull cans rolling around because Red Bull had just come onto the market too. A cafetiere and bags of beans, like seriously, you know. And then I just got to the point where I literally couldn't. I got the jitters for the first time and I had no idea what that was. I really didn't know. And I just felt worse the more I tried to drink coffee to feel better. And I just didn't know what to do. So yeah, there's definitely, it's important that when we're trying to reduce, so if you're getting the jitters or you're not sleeping, you really, there's nothing going to change that other than trying to reduce. You don't have to cut it out, but reduce the amount of caffeine that you're having, particularly in the latter half of the day before you might get to sleep. So the thing to do there is there's 3 herbs that I would use to get a boost of energy that are not related to a cup of coffee. So the first one would be green cardamom. So green cardamom is absolutely amazing at just giving you an energy boost. So you could either grind that into, you could make it into tea, or you could actually just chew on the seeds. And we used to do this in herb school about 4 in the afternoon in a phytochemistry lesson. You know, the cardamom pods would start to get passed along the row. So that's a really good one, even just chewing it. And it's a really nice flavor as well. But you could add that into, if you break open the green pod, you can add that in. So I would always have a little, I have these little pots of things that I take with me. So I sometimes have those. Another really good
supermarkets. Can you just buy? I've never heard of green cardamom.
Green cardamom is really often used in Indian food.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a little like a green shell, and inside the pod are these tiny little black seeds. So it's those seeds that you want.
Okay.
So that's really useful. The other thing that I use is rosemary. So rosemary is really interesting because it increases the blood circulation to your brain. So it brings oxygen to your brain, so it makes you feel more awake. And also rosemary itself is a mild antidepressant. So if you're in that kind of fog, and you can't lift your head out of it, it's really good because it really lifts the mood as well. The one thing with rosemary though is that if you use it too late in the day, it can keep you awake. Okay. But I guess that's just like caffeine. So if it's not going to do that as strongly as caffeine would. So, but that's another one that's easy to take. So you can either take some dried with you, or you could just, you know, if, for example, if chefs are cooking and they've got access to some fresh herbs, they would be able to just use it fresh. Okay. And even with rosemary, or the other thing with rosemary is the essential oil. So that's a tiny, tiny little bottle, and you can just literally smell that, because the medicine of rosemary is in the aroma. Wow. And it goes directly up the nose and affects the brain. I mean, it's so direct. So we used to do that. If the cardamom pods weren't going around, the little bottle of rosemary essential oil. So
wow, that's incredible. I'm going to have a rosemary tea tomorrow. I've got fresh rosemary growing in the garden, and I'm definitely going to try it out.